Hello and welcome everyone to the full moon lunar eclipse in Sagittarius guided releasing practice. This is July 16th. We're just kind of coming into the full moon, doing our guided releasing practice. So I'm Phaedra. I'm the astrologer and artist of Mystick, Physick, Astrology, and I use Western Sidereal astrology in my practice to help you reconnect with your soul purpose and remember why you came into this world to begin with. And we're going to be doing some of that work this evening with the guided releasing practice. So my aim is really to offer guidance to you on how you can consciously use the energy of the transiting planets, including the new and full moon, to affect your lives in a positive way. And so thanks for joining me. This is going to be kind of fun. We just had a full moon in Sagittarius last month as well. And so we kind of have explored Sagittarian territory a little bit already, but tonight we're going to be delving into some new ways of exploring ways in which we might be keeping ourselves from being able to really move forward based on how we express and manifest Sagittarian energy in our lives. So thanks for joining me. I am going to copy and paste the link to the online chart calculator in the live broadcast comments real quick. So bear with me while I refresh the feed and get this posted in the comments for you. Really kind of excited for, I love the full moon releasing practices anyway, but at the eclipses, they feel like even more powerful, and so I'm very, very excited for this evening. But there you go. There's a link to the online calculator if you need to look up your sidereal sign placements. We're using the Fagan-Bradley zodiac, and in particular, you want to know your ascendant, your sidereal rising sign. Ideally, you'll work with the house that Sagittarius falls in your natal chart. However, I always encourage folks when we're working with eclipses, go where you feel guided. So if that's not necessarily the same direction as the house that Sagittarius occupies in your natal chart, then that's fine. Just go where your guidance is taking you. That's the most important thing. Okay, so tonight, last time we took a look at where we've been staying small, and we looked at releasing old, outmoded beliefs that we had been carrying around, right? This time we're going to explore some new prompts, and I'm going to conduct the live stream a little bit different than normal. Let's see. So normally what we do is kind of a three-part broadcast when we do the new and full moon broadcast, where I will talk to you a little bit at the beginning about this particular full moon and what you need to know about it, what the energy of it is, that sort of thing, what its characteristics are and how that can affect you and how you might need to navigate it. And then typically what we do in the second part of every broadcast is we go into what houses this is falling in for each of you by rising sign. Now we did that already with the last broadcast last month, and I don't necessarily want to repeat that. So what I'm going to invite you to do this time is if you don't know what house this is falling in for you by your rising sign, let me know in the comments what your sidereal rising sign is, and I will let you know what house it is and what the themes of that house are. And that way, if you choose to work with them, you can proceed that way. And then for anyone else, if you want to go where you feel led, or if you already know where Sagittarius is in your chart, for me, I have Sagittarius in the 7th house, so I already know. But if you already know, we can skip past that part. And then what we'll do at the end is we'll kind of recap a little bit on the archetypes and themes of Sagittarius in the third part of the broadcast. I won't go too in-depth into some of the same concepts that we covered last month, because you can always rewatch that portion of last month's broadcast. But then we'll explore some new ways that we can move through areas where we might be kind of stuck in working with Sagittarius energy in our lives. Okay, so thanks and welcome to tonight's broadcast. It's just a little bit different format this time around. So let's talk a little bit. I'm going to recap some of what we talked about already earlier today in the Sidereal Insights Astro Update. Excuse me, I can't talk tonight. So I'll recap a little bit about what we said about the full moon in today's broadcast earlier, just to kind of get everyone up to speed. It is eclipse season, and that's the important thing to know. So we're going to be feeling tension in the houses that the July eclipses activate, which are the Gemini Sagittarius axis, right? This is totally normal to be feeling that kind of tension during eclipse time, and mostly it will be over by the end of August through mid-September or so. That will be when the July 2nd and 16th eclipses will have finally run their course. Whatever news they have to deliver will be delivered by then. We'll all be in a new place and moving forward from where we are in this new place, right? This particular lunar eclipse takes place at 29 degrees 3 minutes, and it's a very emotional eclipse. It's in Sagittarius. Jupiter, as the ruler of Sagittarius, is in Scorpio, right? So we're dealing with a little fixed water in the mix of our mutable fire sign eclipse, right? We all know fire and water don't necessarily go really well together, so that's going to create some turbulence, I think would be a good way to describe it, right? Kind of like a pot of boiling water. It's going to create some turbulence that we're all going to have to kind of work through as we proceed. But that's because we have Jupiter and Mars feeding off each other in the water signs Scorpio and Cancer. And of course, Mars is active principle. It's very passionate. It's very driven, right? And Jupiter tends to enhance the qualities of whatever it is it's touching, right? It tends to expand and augment and magnify those traits. And so we have this, it's almost like a feedback loop, if you want to say, with this particular full moon. It kind of sets the stage for really dramatic endings, right? Because we all know eclipses bring about beginnings and endings. We could also bring kind of dogmatic conflicts coming to a head, right? And so, like we talked about earlier in the day, religious and political matters could be kind of hot button issues, and cultural differences might be highlighted. This is kind of in a very general sense, right? But collectively, what this means is that we kind of tend to be prone to overdoing it. We kind of are prone to excess, right? And exaggeration even. And so we kind of want to instinctively pursue what feels good and enjoyable, but that can lead us to too much of a good thing, right? Like overindulging. And what happens when you do that, right? Usually there's some kind of hangover, whether that's physical or metaphysical, I guess you could say. But because it's eclipse time, because we have so many retrogrades, because we have Mercury retrograde, you might want to hold off if you need to make an important decision or take a significant course of action. You might want to deploy stalling tactics if you can, really to kind of buy yourself time for the eclipse to play out for you, to buy yourself time for whatever types of changes might be coming up with Mercury retrograde to be worked through before you commit to a final course of action or before you commit to a final decision later on. Any kind of delay is really only likely to benefit you in the long run right now in that regard. But the full moon in Sagittarius, it kind of brings some challenges. It's kind of an awkward set of energies. It, in one way, offers a second chance to go back and readdress anything that may not have been fully wrapped up or fully addressed at last month's full moon in Sagittarius. Okay, so that's one way that you might approach using this full moon. The other way is that you could also use it to go back to a project or some endeavor that you started in the past that you never finished, and pick up the threads of that and go through another second opportunity to actually finish it. So those are two kind of positive ways that you could work with this energy. The other way is that if you choose to use this full moon to finish something important, just know that you might have to go back and make corrections later. And so if that poses no real difficulty for your particular situation, or if you have Mercury retrograde even in your natal chart, then that might be less of a concern for you. So it's kind of a weird full moon in terms of like, how do you use it in the physical world? Because normally at the full moons, we're finishing up big projects and we're launching things, right? Like that's when you give birth to something that you've been working on. And we don't normally recommend doing that during a Mercury retrograde. Plus, the ruler of the full moon is retrograde, and so it's kind of a challenging situation. But yes, if you do try to finish something up right now, you might find yourself revisiting it down the road and making adjustments or corrections later, just kind of tweaking it. If you have Sagittarius sun or rising, pay attention, because you will be particularly affected by this full moon. And then, of course, we were talking about if you have a planet or point at 29 degrees of an air or fire sign, you could expect to feel this particular full moon directly, and the strength of the eclipse behind it, right? What this particular full moon offers us is a really powerful opportunity to transform our mindset around whatever it is we're facing in our Sagittarius house or in the Gemini Sagittarius axis in the chart. Okay, so think of it as an opportunity to change your mind, right? To find a new way of looking at things, to find a fresh perspective. So take the opportunity to try to see whatever this is in a new light and imagine a new outcome. Okay, what we'll do is we'll move on to part 3, our normal part 3, which would be to review the Sagittarius archetype and themes of Sagittarius. And we won't spend too long on that, because again, we covered it last month during our first full moon in Sagittarius. But I want to give you a refresher before we move into the new prompts that we're going to be working with tonight.